I have dillied and dallied far too long. Time to bring in Chris Doran and find out what's going on in Chris's mind. And so, did I fix VAR?
I mean, I think you came close, John. It's so great to see you this morning. Thanks for having me on the show.
Good to see you.
Yeah, I've been paying attention to the experimentation options that are out there. The whole body rule, I think, is the one that appeals to me most because you and I can go all the way back to, I mean, maybe the days in North American Soccer League history when there was that 35-yard line, the offside line, comparable to the blue line in hockey. I really would prefer to see that we don't spend so much time litigating, not just in the booth, but even between the referee and the VAR.
Yeah.
And I think it would be easier if we were able to say the whole body and not just a toe or not just a portion of the torso.
And the point that you make is, and folks sit there and they're kvetching about VAR. It's not VAR you need to be kvetching about. It's about the laws of the game. So, VAR can only do so much. The person who's in charge of VAR can only do so much until they over-litigate themselves and they overstep their actual duties. If you're going to have a problem with it, then fix the rule. The rule is the issue 9 times out of 10 and not VAR itself. That's kind of what I'm trying to remind folks on a daily basis.
And that's a tremendous bit of clarity from you this morning. You've clearly got yourself sharpened for today's show.
Nice.
Good for you.
That's scary. All right. So my second question, while we were in the break before he came on air, when it comes to, and this is something that has bugged me all week long and is something that has also bugged me for about 75 years. Do you have problems taking pills in the morning? Do you always end up, the ones that taste the worst, they always end up going, they always stay the longest when you're trying to take pills in the morning?
Well, let's clarify what we mean by the word pills.
Yeah, no, like your morning medications and things like that. Like if you're taking, like aspirin and stuff like that. Not like Timothy Leary kind of stuff, but like if you have morning medications that you have to take every day, traditionally it's the one that tastes the worst that ends up sticking in your mouth the longest.
Right.
Same.
Yes, that's absolutely true. My wife has started me on a garlic pill.
Whoa! Wow.
Yeah. It's actually not bad, but that is the one that sticks in the taste buds the longest. Usually takes about an hour. Sometimes I'll revisit it like at an hour, 10 minutes after I've taken it. Yeah. But everything else is a nutritional supplement, vitamins, that sort of thing. So I'm very fortunate not to have to be on any of the pills. I should be taking them on a regular basis. The garlic pill is one of them I take every day.
So no vampires at the Doran household?
No, there are none. As a matter of fact, yes.
Try to ward them off. And so that's just random stuff that I've had in my brain that I've tried to tackle all week long. And I'm trying to get an evidence comparison.
What are you taking them with?
Well, I mean, it's like my morning soda. So, I mean, it's,
okay.
or water or whatever. It just so happened that the last one I had to take was here at the desk. And what I have here at the desk is the morning soda. It's not like water with all the others all the way upstairs to kick things off, but it's like, oh, crap, I have to take this last one. And so it's here at the desk. And so there you go. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So this is the kind of insightful stuff that we always talk about here on a morning show. I just want to see if I was alone in this or not. And I'm not surprised that I pretty much, I'm on an island when it comes to this kind of stuff. Brought you in here to actually talk about Columbus. And what's going on with the crew. Let me start with what happened last night. After you depart this morning, we're going to talk about She Believes and the visit that was in Columbus and the word that the Haslams are kind of kicking the tires on an idea of an NWSL franchise. How, when that came across everybody's breaking news, barriers and everything, what was the thought pattern there? Have you had any feedback just in general about what folks have thought?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of questions. That the Haslams are investigating it does not surprise me in the least. They own a portion of the Milwaukee Bucks. They've long appreciated the work that's been done in Columbus, mostly by the leadership team and the Johnson and Edwards families in conjunction with the Haslam families in getting this investment in the Columbus Crew to the point where it's a high value franchise in the league. And so I can't blame them because they are investors, that they are looking at the NWSL, that Ohio is pretty clear in terms of NWSL competitive franchises, and it would be a great opportunity. Now, I jumped the gun a little bit in that I thought, well, okay, how are we going to fit them in at Ohio Health Performance Center? How are we going to get their games at Scotts Miracle Grove Field during our seasons? So I was really premature and I think rather narrow-minded in that. When you look at Denver and Denver's new NWSL team, the ownership group is completely different from the group that owns the Colorado Rapids.
Right.
And that new women's team wants nothing to do with Dick's Sporting Goods Park. They're building their new stadium downtown, and they are going to be blowing the doors off of early admissions to that for that team's games. I'm not saying that the Haslams would avoid using Scotts Miracle Grove Field, but you and I have a very simple understanding of economics. My appreciation probably a lot more simple than yours. But when you got a building that's valued at $315 million, a bill that you still have to pay, and you have a potential second tenant, there may be some wisdom in the idea that you play both teams in the same building. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it could happen, or they could build another facility, another game facility. And I don't know, but I think it's exciting, and I don't blame the Haslam Sporting Group for getting involved in possible discussions about it.
Yeah, and we were trying to think of, obviously, when Team 17 happens here in 2 seasons in the NWSL, we were just kind of spitballing out loud, since it's a turf surface. Could you imagine the double headers that you could have with the NWSL? Like a day-night double header, like we used to have in baseball, where you have the NWSL maybe start things off, and then you clean the field out. Everybody goes out and tailgates. They come back in for night side, and they have a Major League Soccer. And so you'd have 40,000 people twice in the span of a morning and an afternoon and an evening. So, that was just us spitballing just ideas and things. But no, I had to ask about that.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be critical of your concept, but I will push back just a little bit. Double headers are very difficult.
Yes.
I think they're tough for facilities. I think they're tough for teams. If I'm running a team, I want my unique date. Now, the caveat to that is, in the early days, you may recall, Major League Soccer would host these international friendlies prior to the MLS game, because we weren't getting bodies in the seats for the MLS games. But if you brought in David Beckham and Real Madrid playing against Chivas Guadalajara, then you'd probably get a pretty good crowd. And I called a game for international television featuring those two teams back in the 90s. No, early 2000s, when Beckham was still with Real Madrid. And we had 75,000 people in Soldier Field, hoping that at least half would stick around for that Chicago Fire New England Revolution game at 6 p.m. I know the days have changed, but I also know that people's schedules are very, very compact.
Yeah.
And so the flexibility in those doubleheader days sometimes forces folks to choose one or the other, but not both.
Yep. Last time out for Crew, it was a matchup against Sporting Kansas City, and the Bishop gets a brace. That sounds like a headline for the Kansas City Star, actually. Dejan,
I love that.
2 goals, 24 minutes apart. Diego Rossi scores in the 82nd. There was a moment, we'll put it as that for a bit, and it's a 2-2 draw by the time of things. Now that you've had a couple days to kind of process what went down, what are your big takeaways from that draw in Kansas City?
Well, I think, like Henrik Rydstrom said yesterday during media days at Ohio Health Performance Center, immediately following the match, it was kind of disappointing. I mean, even Steven Moreira said the locker room was really down. People were upset, and as well they should have been. It's probably a great fire for them, no pun intended, to have in their bellies going into the weekend, where they've got their home opener on Saturday here in Columbus. That said, coming back after having watched the tape, Henrik Rydstrom says, you know what? Some of it really wasn't that bad. In fact, it was pretty good. One thing I focused on, John, was the last 18 minutes. And for those who didn't see it, I'll just paint the picture. Columbus is down 2-1. It's the 81st minute. Sporting Kansas City is depleted in terms of energy and subs. Columbus puts on their last sub, Yamal Tiare, who I know you know of, having played in Atlanta. He's a disruptor up top. I think that's a pretty fair statement.
Yes.
And he was playing alongside Wessam Abu Ali for the final 8 minutes plus added time. Well, John, the final 8 minutes also included 9 minutes of added time. So we're talking about a segment of the game that's about 18 minutes long. Columbus down 2-1. They go to two center backs and two front runners. Diego Rossi scores a goal in the 82nd minute. We draw a penalty kick in the 85th minute. Yes, we missed that, but we drew the penalty kick and then had another shot on frame. In the 18 minutes, John, we had 60% of our overall shots on frame. In those 18 minutes, we also had half of the shots of the entire game. We had 11 entries into the box, and we held Sporting Kansas City to just 2 entries into the box on the other end of the field. My point is this. We went to 2 center backs, didn't play with 3. We had high wing backs, and we had 2 front runners with Rossi really floating around the flanks. And we were able to generate that kind of offensive impact. I will grant you that Sporting Kansas City was exhausted. And when the game got to 2-2, all they wanted was the draw.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I think it was a harbinger for what we may actually see from the Columbus Crew later in the season. I'm not talking about this Saturday, but I am saying that I think our personnel actually speaks more strongly to a 4-back system than a 3-back. And I think with the players that we've got in the attack who are generating goals, the 2 players you mentioned, Diego Rossi and Wessam Abu Ali, I think we get them more chances that way.
What does a healthy Wessam Abu Ali bring to the table? Because, folks might be drifting in and out. They'll sit there and they'll get a cup of coffee with him, and then they'll notice that he's injured and he's got to come back through rehab and get back to full song. What does a full Wessam Abu Ali bring to the table?
Well, he'll even admit to you that he's at about 90% right now. He had a really light offseason because of that broken foot. Nobody wanted to take any chances. You can't blame them. But he's got a goal in each of the last 5 games he started for the Columbus Crew, going all the way back to the fall of last year. And so looking for goal number 6 against Chicago, I think what we're going to see is an inspired Wessam Abu Ali who's finding his legs now going into the 3rd game of the Major League Soccer season. As we spoke with Danny Higginbotham yesterday on Apple TV, he made the observation that Wessam, for the first time since Cucho, is the one Crew player who's really stretching the attack for the Columbus Crew. Diego Rossi's not that player. He'd much rather play just underneath that first line of attack. And in fact, that's where Diego's goals have come from in these last 2 games. So as Wes presses the back line and pushes them all the way practically to the 6, the space opens up at the top of the 18. That's where Rossi and even Daniel Gazdag for a bit can find some space and finish some plays. Abu Ali, I think, is going to become much more of a threat as the weeks wear on. He is fully healthy, but as I said, in his words, 90% there in the way of fitness.
So if we were to kind of break this into the other football parlance, would it be safe to say that Wes is your deep threat at wide receiver? He's the guy that takes the top off the defense, and then you have Rossi and Gazdag who want to work the underneath routes because that space is created because everybody's focusing on the deep route. You have those 2 come in from behind, and you get the possession in the middle of the field, and that way space is created for them to get the yardage and the distance downfield.
I think that's a great analogy. I'd like to see a couple of short post runs from Wessam Abu Ali in the midfield, and then I'd like to see what we can do with guys on the flanks going forward. So, that check to the midfield is incredibly important for a true number 9. And when he does that, we need to have a player underneath to whom he can play that ball. And then those wing options become the next play to the outside. I think one of the things that we've missed out on in our attack over the last couple of games is that in playing with fairly conservative wingbacks, playing against conservative wingbacks, Max Arfston and Andres Herrera have not quite been as penetrating as we've been accustomed to. Andres Herrera in particular has been sort of, I think, saddled with a little more defensive responsibility, in particular in that first week against Portland because Steven Moreira was not available for selection.
Right.
So if we can get that short ball connection, let West drop the ball off in the midfield, turn and go. Now you've got your penetrating run in between the two center backs. You got some wing options. We've got two or three great ball carriers in Diego Rossi, Hugo Picard, as well as Dylan Chambeau when he gets back from injury. So there's a lot of promise, I think, in the midfield. We just, at this point, not only in the buildup, but also in the recovery runs and the pressure in slowing the counterattack from the opponent, we've really struggled a little bit defensively in the midfield.
Crew getting ready for Chicago Fire coming up this weekend, and so we enlist our friend Chris Doran to break down everything when it comes to Crew. Let me phrase it this way. How different is it stylistically under Rydstrom versus Wilfrid Nancy, or is it Nancy adjacent, or am I trying to look at things in a larger picture when I should be looking at things at a game-by-game basis when it comes to approach for Rydstrom when it comes to 2026 in Crew?
Yeah, I think as a fan, and I can speak from that standpoint, I think we're still trying to sort that one out. You bring up a really great question. It's really funny if you go back to, and Greg Berhalter, as you know, the head coach of the Chicago Fire, comes back to Columbus, a city that he really loves. But Greg was the head coach for Columbus in the 2000 teens and got us to the 2015 MLS Cup. Greg was very much an orchestrator. I think those of you who didn't see him in his MLS days saw him as a men's national team coach, and you could see he was very active on the sideline, very much wanted to direct traffic. With regards to Caleb Porter, the next coach, he was like, we got to loosen the reins a little bit. These guys don't make a 30-yard sprint until they get a green flag from the bench. Those are my words, by the way, not Caleb's. Then we had Wilfrid Nancy, who reeled it all back in, didn't he? I mean, it became a lot more, I won't say predictable, but a lot more orchestrated. Yeah. I think we've got the ship going the other way just a little bit. It's listing towards letting them loose a bit. And in particular, that has to do with getting into the attacking half of the field. But Rydstrom was a midfielder in his playing days. He wants organization. He knows what kind of damage can be done by the right people in the midfield defensively and on the attack. And I think that's the question that he's still sorting out. Once that's sorted, I think we're going to see a truer version of what Rydstrom wants from this group as we get closer to the latter part of this first half of the season, which ends with the start of the World Cup in June.
When Chicago comes in, obviously they will be without the little ball. I hate Johnny Dean and getting the red card that he got. And so then, of course, you're playing CF Montreal, you're up a goal, you get a red card. So what happens? You score two more and you win 3-0. That goes more, I think, to the issues of Montreal than it does the successes of Chicago. They're still dealing with injury issues. Andrew Gutman is 0 for 2 out of the blocks, still trying to get back to full song. When you look at Chicago, it is Kuipers, it is Zinkernagel, it is Jonathan Bamba. It is weapons coming at you from all over the place with Greg Berhalter, getting his, second year in with everything there in Chicago. When you look at Chicago, what concerns you the most, you think?
Whether or not Brian Gutierrez may want to come back for a Saturday date, because he killed us last year with a couple of goals. I mean, I just absolutely love Gutierrez, and I'm glad he's not on the roster anymore, but I hope he's doing well.
Yes.
Kuipers doesn't stop. Gutman is a Midwest kid and, played against Ohio State several times as he was an Indiana kid. And, he's always going to be dangerous as soon as he finds his flow. But I think you put your finger on it with mostly Zinkernagel and Kuipers. Bamba stretches the attack a little bit. Our flanks become a tad bit vulnerable when that stretch happens, especially on the counter. And if we've sorted that out, if we are finding solutions, if in fact maybe some personnel gets changed up for this home opener, then we'll start to see some solutions. It's a dangerous team. It's a team that has now heard the same coach for the second year. Yeah. And they understand what they're capable of, having had that brief success going to the playoffs last year. And I'm sure they're hungry for more. Plus, they're all amping up toward 2027 or 28 with that new stadium. I mean, I would bet a lot of this roster would love to be with this team when that palace is opened up in Chicago in the next couple of years. So they're all working hard for Greg. Greg's a great coach. We have to be up to the task on Saturday.
I still think that place is too small because they're saying it's only going to be 22,000, I think. And I'm like,
Yeah,
that's too small. Get to 30. Come on now, to 78. All right, blatant promo time. For those that want to listen to you, not just on Saturday, but all the time, how do they do it?
We're excited to announce that iHeartRadio has expanded the network. You can always listen online, but sometimes when you're in the truck or car, you're passing through a city, or you're a resident of an Ohio city that has an affiliate. We're excited to announce that we've got 7 affiliates across the state of Ohio.
Wow.
But iHeartRadio is your source. You can find us 40 minutes before kickoff on any given game night. And then we do Inside the Crew on Wednesday nights. It's a podcast Thursday, so you can download the podcast on Thursday and listen to it whenever you have time.
And the local option on the Apple TVs, when you hit there and you go audio and you go local radio, and you can listen to that guy right there. Chris
You're
Doran.
the man. Thank you, John, so much.
Good to see you, my friend. Don't be a stranger. We'll see you soon.